Good evening. This is Fostering Lives, and I'm your host, Dr. Yvette Mitchell, and we will be talking about tonight grandparents raising children. In fact, this is episode 3 of my special unit called Grandparents Stepping Up. So I'm so happy to be with you this evening and to talk to you so that you understand as grandparents, you are not alone. There are millions of parents raising grandchildren these days. And you are just a special part of it. So that we're going to talk a little bit about how did you initially react when you heard the news of having to raise your grandchildren? A lot of parents suffer with grandparents suffer with shock or with anger or with just being frightened because some of you have been out of raising children for a long time, and the thought of raising children and having diapers and all of those kinds of things is pretty intimidating. I know what I felt when I had to raise my granddaughter at 7 days old, and that my child at that time was 18, and I had another child, 28. So it was a real shock to me when I had to think about raising my granddaughter, and then turned around at 67 years old and raised the sibling of my foster child at 4 days old. So I do fully understand the feelings you might have been feeling at the time of raising your grandchild, whether it's stepping in because mother had a drug issue or fathers or parents were having drug issues or incarceration. It doesn't matter what the cause is that you stepped up. You, as the grandparent, taking on this challenge of raising a children. And raising children today in 2024 is just a little bit different than, say, you and I came up in the 50s and 60s. So we really have to learn to adjust our mind to get reacclimated to the world today and how we raise our children. So we need to talk a few minutes about the immediate challenges. First, just getting the child in. When my grandchild came, I didn't have a diaper, I didn't have a crib, I didn't have clothes, I didn't have anything. And here this 7 day old beautiful child was looking at me. So I had to go out and get everything. And of course, I didn't have anything, and the parent wasn't in a position to give me any tools or diapers or food or anything at this time. So I felt on my own. Fortunately, as an educator, and since I was a daycare provider as well, I did have some resources to get diapers and formula and that kind of thing. But many of us do not. And so you need to know how to reach out to services in your area that do provide for newborn children or for very young infants that can give you, um, depending on where you live, if you're in a large metropolitan city, usually there's several resources for getting free diapers and free meals in an emergency. So you just need to look at on the websites or look up infants supplies for infants. But there are a number of resources where you can get free diapers, free formula, and possibly a crib and strollers and a lot of resources. I will provide a listing to you the next time we meet because my granddaughter now has a son, and I was surprised how many resources, and she wasn't. It wasn't that she was able to, but these services were available to her, and so she took full advantage of it. So I'm going to share those things with you. And the next point I want to talk about after the immediate challenges and adjustments of the ballot, um, we want to talk about how the relationship happens to change a little bit with our adult children, those children whose children we have. That can be a very precarious and sometimes very hurtful situation. So you've got to become prepared for that. And I have a very simple philosophy that I took on when I got my grandchild is I have one main concern, and that main concern is the health and well-being of the child in my care. So sometimes it may mean that I have to hurt the feelings or hurt the or not be as gentle as I normally would be with my own child, my son in this case. But if you ask me if this has come upon me, then I'm going to treat this child like my own and I'm going to do everything, which means for me, I automatically become a warrior, a mother bear cub, if you have, because she's my first concern. So what my child is feeling or what's going on in their life is over there. I'm dealing with this child. If you didn't want me to do it, then you need to step up and do the things that you need to do, and I can go on about my business. However, if you give me this child, if this child is now in my care, whether through you giving the child a support system or whatever, then I'm going to do all the things that are necessary. Maybe hurting your feelings might be one of those things. So you have to, and I know it's very, very difficult for grandparents because what you're talking about dealing with is possibly your child, your biological child, and sometimes that's very hurtful. But at the same time, if the child was removed through DHS or something that you know the child was not in a good situation, or you taking over the petition to court to take the child, then you know your child was not in a good, healthy situation. So it is your responsibility. I know that it's difficult. I know that it's hard feelings, and you have to be okay with that. And one of the things I have trained other parents to say, you have to be ready for defeat. And as a mother, we are. And if you ask me to become a mother again, then all my mother instincts rose up, which means I will fight anybody for this child. So we need to be able to um, you need to be able to realistically deal with your child, not intimidated. You are not being, they are not doing you a favor by allowing you to take care of this. This is a huge responsibility. And you must be able to function within that responsibility. And there's some particular things that you need to be able to do because grandparents don't really have rights. And that's some of the things that we might want to talk more about and advocate for in our society. That if we've been asked to take on this role, then our rights as grandparents need to be protected. And but the child can't just be snatched from us back and forth because that creates trauma for you, because you have a tendency to love these babies so much. And then for them to be unfairly snatched from you, or the parent starts to use them as a pawn, that is very difficult trauma on you. So you have to protect yourself and be prepared for that and take some action so you don't fall into that situation. So we'll talk more again as we're going through the podcast. We'll spend some more time on how do you deal with the relationship of the adult child or the parent of this child. So I want to move on into how do you balance some of these roles um, between being a parent and a grandparent. Well, let me tell you from my experience first with my grandchild. I had my grandchild uh, call me my mom, but she ultimately wound up calling me mama. That was her choice, and I didn't fight against it. And I really wasn't concerned about what mother or dad said. At that particular time, I was this child's mom. It's what she needed, and that's what she called me. Again, you have to be prepared because quite often, um, the mother does not want, or the parents do not want the child calling anybody else mother. And that is based on your relationship with your child and what the situation is. But my mom is fine. And if you explain to the child, I'm taking care of you now because my mom can't or daddy can't, and I'm mama. It's okay that you call me mama. And that should be okay with the parents. And if it's not, that's a decision you have to make. With my adopted children, I had both the 6-year-old, initially a 6 years old, she's 15 now, and I have a four had her sibling 2 years later at 4 days old. And she has called me mommy from the beginning. And even though her biological mom did not appreciate it, that wasn't my problem. That's the song where it's not my problem. It's hers. She has to deal with this. But I'm not going to deny this child the ability to call me mommy. She needs a mommy. Every child needs a mommy. And I was it for now. And she calls me mommy to this day. Whereas the older child does not. She calls me Aunt Bet, and my name is Yvette, and that's fine with me. We just left it up to her to call me what she felt necessary. And she still wanted contact with her mother, where the baby never knew her. She came straight from the hospital to me at 4 days old. So she has never had a lot of contact. I have allowed some contact with me, but still, and I just, and she calls her biological mom um, by her first name, which happens to be Cindy. So she calls her mom Cindy. And that's fine. I don't have any problem. I am confident in who I am. And that's what you have to do. You have to be confident in who you are and what you're doing. And that confidence will show to the child, will show to the parent, no matter how angry the parent gets or how annoyed the parent gets. That's their problem, not yours. Your problem is to make this child feel as comfortable as, as possible. But we will talk about how to maintain a healthy relationship with the child's parents. Sometimes that is possible, sometimes, sadly, it is not. So you have to look at the particulars of your particular case, attempt to do some things, but there's sometimes you have to come to the understanding that you're not going to have the most positive relationship with your child while the baby or the infant or grandchild is in the custody, because they have feelings about it, especially if they're removed by the systems. Then they're angry with you. And sometimes that anger spills over to the children, and they teach the children also to be angry with you. And that creates more trauma as the child gets older. And we'll be discussing that um, as the time goes along. We'll be discussing what happens when the parent gets in the mix and creates trauma for the child, thereby creating trauma for you. And then we're going to talk a minute about setting some boundaries and expectations. Each one of these um, things that I'm going through need to be fleshed out um, individually. And so we'll try to do 4 episodes around boundaries and expectations or working with the child's parent or anything that you might need as you are texting me and letting me know uh, who, what information that you want. You tell me what information you are specifically concerned about, and we'll make sure to do a focus around that. Uh, then we want to talk about overcoming some of the challenges that you have uh, in dealing with becoming a parent again. And is is one of the things I'm sure about is financial strain on research. You have worked very hard all your life, and here you are in retirement or getting ready to retire. The cost of a child today is very, very expensive. And you being able to afford the needs of a child, especially if you have no support from the parents. And usually, if you're not in some kind of DHS situation, you do not get financial help. So one of the things that we're going to talk about, how do you apply to kinship care? And kinship care is not something the parent has to approve. It's something that you can apply for that will give you additional help based on your income. You could begin to get food stamps or EPT card, and definitely have the medical health of the child taken care of, and as well as possibly sometimes you cash benefits. So we're going to talk to you about the process of applying for kinship care and some other things that you might need to do to make sure that you are in a better financial position to take care of your grandchild. My case, I did not get any support. I was in a position, thank goodness, to take care of my grandchild, added her to my insurance, and kept moving forward. But in many cases, that's not the case. If you're retired or older, and I was 48 when my granddaughter came to me, and so, and I was working in a career at the time, and was able to support her. However, that is again not the case with many grandparents, and so you need to know how you can get the things that the child needs with um, with care. And so we'll talk about some of the financial strains and some resources. Again, there are resources. You do need to do a little bit of research, and you also have to be prepared to advocate. What do I mean by that? You have to advocate. You have to speak up for yourself. They will not come to you automatically. You have to speak up, and sometimes you have to fight for it. Let me give you an example. This is not my grandchild. This is my foster child when she came to me and I started fostering. They brought the child to me straight from the hospital, and not because she was just born, but because she was burned and someone had thrown hot water on her. And so she just came in burned and easily with the very pussy, very grotesque burns and bars and pressure outputs and like. And when they brought her to me, they brought her in as a general child, which was incorrect because not only did this child have medical issues, she was also had behavior issues, which was not uh, revealed to me until sometime that I've had her for some period of time. But in any event, with the extra care she needed, the extra appointments and the extra things that were needed for her, they expected me to do without any support. And so I needed to advocate for her. So I just started writing caseworker's boss, the head of the associate foster care system, and wind up actually going to DHS commissioner here in Philadelphia and got her changed to the proper medical status that she needed to be, and getting some additional other support. So you have to be prepared. Now, that does not mean that the caseworker and her supervisor liked me very much, but again, that was not my problem. The problem was you placed this child in my care, and you're going to give her the things that she needs to function, and you're going to give me the resources and tools that I need. A little difficult, little change is difficult to as a parent to take on the child without going through kinship care. It's a little more difficult. However, if you go through kinship care, you can advocate a little stronger. We'll give you some resources do with it, however it goes. And it does mean that you need to protect yourself and protect, because if not, you'll wind up being very, very stressed in being placed in a position that someone else is controlling you. And that's just not a healthy position for you or for the child. And as we get older, our health changes. So you do not need to be adding to your stress. So you need to be understand what are the things that you need to get uh, in place to be able to properly take care of the child physically and mentally and financially, and taking care of yourself. Self care again. is so extremely important. You know, they laugh at me often because they always see me with my nails done, or whatever. But that is my time to reset and regenerate so that I can do the things that I need to do for my adopted children. So overcoming the financial strain and resource management, physical and emotional toll of parenting, and that is tough. Again, when I got my uh, grandchild, I was 48 years old. I wasn't quite 50, and I was pretty physically fit because I had just, while I was actually still taking care or getting ready to take care, I had been living with my mother and my aunt, and wind up having to take care of them until their death. So at one time, I was taking care of my mother, my my aunt, and my granddaughter all at one time. That was a pretty strenuous situation. And so shortly after my husband passed suddenly, so there was a lot going on with me. And so I had to learn how to balance all of that mentally to keep straight for being able to care for them and being able to take care of my granddaughter and keep her physically and mentally balanced and keeping me physically fit. So that's very important. You need to know what your own barriers are. You need to know what your own limits. You need to be very, very honest with yourself so that you can do things that you're supposed to do. If if you don't, you're going to wind up being ill physically and mentally. I'm sure you understand that if you are mentally feeling good, then your body is feeling good. And that mentally feeling bad can make you very, very ill. So it's important that you know, and you also have to draw those lines and boundaries so that you stay physically and mentally prepared to take care of yourself and your other obligations if you're working, as well as the child. So you really have to make sure you're physically and mentally um, prepared to take care of the child. And so navigating the next step that I want to talk about is navigating the complexities of modern parenting. I think we will spend a whole um, episode just on navigating the complexities of parenting, of modern parenting, and how that differs, because it differs greatly from when we came up in the 50s and 60s, greatly. And you need to understand, lots of times you don't understand what's going on in children. And I used to say a lot I used to say a lot about, I, what, okay, let's get, let's see.